So the Kundalini here is courted as the goddess from get-going. So that the approach and understanding and the worship of Kundalini is that of the ultimate reality, Shiva himself in the guise that is responsible here for every idea, every thought, every emotion, everything that we know and we don't, every emotional state, every feeling, everything here is an expression of Kundalini. So the question of Kundalini here is very different than how Kundalini is spoken in modern spirituality, because the goals are different to begin with. So this may be simply for the general interest. Why is it different and where it differs? In modern spirituality, including that of New Age, the idea of Kundalini primarily stems from yogic practices, which had the goal at harvesting these superpowers that are known to be the byproduct of an awakened Kundalini, awakened goddess. It's enough to read Patanjali Yoga Sutras to see the variety of minute description of these superpowers known as siddhis. The third chapter, entitled Vibhuti Pada, deals with this. It's the largest part of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which otherwise are very, very concise, a very, very slim scripture. It's just because we have it always in the format of the elucidations by various masters. But if you have this somewhere, it will be a very, very slim book. If it's just the sutras themselves, it will be barely few pages. So the Vibhuti Padas deal with how to harvest this or that particular power, this or that particular siddhi. So yogic tradition utilized, if you will, awakening to that end, so that to ride the awakened power and harvest these super powerful abilities. You see? Whereas Tantric Shaivism rests on entirely different intentions altogether from get-going. The Tantric Shaivism, the Trika Shaivism, does not exalt these siddhis as worthy of pursuing. The goal here is what happens after self-realization, after Kundalini completes its journey. And this is of the utmost significance. This is what we're trying to do with the book that we're working on right now, with which the basis of the book is the Kundalini course, where we have redressed this. The goal in Trika Shaivism, as far as Kundalini awakening, is not to end up with these powers. Far from it. The main goal in Kashmir Shaivism is the divinization of the body. The main goal is the process of return. So this is where the true loftiest aspiration of Trika Shaivism. Of course, the term divine body or divinization of the body is problematic because we willingly or unwillingly may be stumbled with a variety of religious connotations that that term carries. So that the divine here, divine body, divinization, carries this current of religious flavor. And this is not in terms of, let's say, becoming this saint whose body is like literally oozing light, becoming this mystic who is, let's say, doesn't need water or eat food, or someone who is like, barely kept on the ground by the force of gravity and need to be held by the brothers and sisters to sit down on a bench and just have something to eat because they're always ready to levitate. This is not the term divine body in Shaivism has very different connotations altogether. Not very different, but not the same. It is embodying Shakti to such degree where the Shakti simply takes over. So let this be thesis to our coming discourse on Samavesha's repossession. So this is paving the way to that understanding of what the main goal in Tantric Shaivism, or else known as Kashmir Shaivism. So the Kundalini here is courted as the goddess from get-going. So that the approach and understanding and the worship of Kundalini is that of the ultimate reality, Shiva himself in the guise that is responsible here for every idea, every thought, every emotion, everything that we know and we don't, every emotional state, every feeling, everything here is an expression of Kundalini. All strata of human display, or display of human qualities here, irrespective of how we see them in the light of being negative or positive, all these are expressive potentiality of Shakti. So you see, this stand taken then begins the process of Samavesha in terms of the movement. So Samavesha, from that point of view, is a movement. And it will remain to be movement until Samavesha becomes one's state. And this what differs the approaches of yogis, whose main goal in majority of schools of yoga is to end up and ride the siddhis, end up with some phenomenal powers, to have some way with the forces of nature. When it comes to Trika Shaivism, in my understanding, in my assessment, the goal is much more noble, much more humble, and forgive me, effectively speaking, much more down to earth and applicable. Because what it makes here is it makes a fully developed individual. This is in the language how I would like to present this, that the full developed individual is an individual who exists in its potentiality in every human being at birth. But that individuality is not fully accessed, not fully actualized. So the fully actualized human being is the being who has walked up and has undergone the process of transfiguration where the process of repossession took place. And of course we need to tread here maybe attentively, because I would like to, before we dive into this head on, I'd like to speak more about the aspect of possession before we speak of repossession. So as to make it very clear, to going back to this distinction, the goal of Shaivites was to have this state of Samavesha where one's individuality prior to that is utterly and entirely replaced by the goddess. So So the goddess then lives not only as a visitor or occasional guest in the house, but she comes and takes the house over. And in taking on the house over, she doesn't live in the house as a host. The whole body, the house itself, the body becomes divinized. The body becomes divine in all its attributes, because literally the Shakti lives through the cellular structure as that awareness in her feminine form as the goddess. A lot of these analogies could be found in the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, even if language is different. We don't know how familiar Sri Aurobindo was familiar with, or how much he was, to what degree he was familiar to the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism. But when I read Sri Aurobindo's Letters to Yoga and various other works, much earlier on, still in my late 20s, early 30s, several years after, re-evaluating that what I read, which was kind of often taken with a pinch of salt, I was like, couldn't help to be taken by the lofty, if not loftiest, proposition for what could constitute human existence. But there was this lingering sense of, what a tall order, like, divinization of the body. There was always this slight sense of disbelief, or like, maybe, but how soon, So, but years after, it became very clear to me exactly what Sri Aurobindo meant, because this was supported by direct cognition, by personal experiences, revelations and insights, which then were richly supported by the teachings that I'm having this privilege to convey in as accessible way as it is possible, in my case, in terms of the degrees of the limitation of my intelligence and capacity to express myself verbally.